What's good? It's Woog. I just wanted to lend some post-fight thoughts on the heavyweight championship rematch between Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua, where Usyk retained his WBA, IBF, and WBO titles via split decision. This was a mega fight with huge ramifications. Took place in Saudi Arabia. And this was a very good fight, competitive fight. I would say it was probably a little bit more competitive than their first bout. And Alexander Usyk had won that one via unanimous decision. Now, this one should have also been a unanimous decision. It was because of the scorecard of Glenn Feldman, who otherwise, isn't he one of the judges who kind of has like a decent reputation along with guys like Weisfeld? But Glenn Feldman scored this fight 115 to 113 in favor of Anthony Joshua. Pretty unbelievable. Not because these rounds were not competitive, but because you would have basically had to have given like every single close or swing round to Anthony Joshua to even come near a 115-113 score for Joshua. I personally had it, and I see what seems to be the prevailing sentiment of the fight was kind of 8 rounds to 4, 116 to 112-ish. That seems to sort of be the consensus scorecard. But going into this fight, it was obviously a lot of questions or more so suggestions on what Anthony Joshua should do differently in this rematch. And some of those things he did do, some of them he kind of did, but perhaps just not enough. And of course, you know, a lot of those suggestions or adjustments that people felt like he should have made, yes, those could also have gassed him earlier. Now, I think that Anthony Joshua was in phenomenal shape for this fight. By the way, Alexander Usyk was more or less the same weight as he was in his first fight. And there was so much talk going into this rematch about Usyk being bigger for this rematch. It was not the case. He was the same weight. And I really try not to make too much of the images and pictures that we see of fighters going into fights, because I mean, I remember the speculation when we saw images of Andy Ruiz going into the rematch with Anthony Joshua. He was looking like super, slimmed down relatively, and a lot of people were saying, oh, look at how much trimmer Andy Ruiz is for this rematch against Anthony Joshua, only to later discover that he was actually like several pounds more, and he was already a heavy dude to begin with. So I try not to make too much of it. It wasn't the case here. He being Usyk, came in at about the same size that he came in during the first fight with Anthony Joshua. But yeah, this was a very good fight. If we wanted to see Anthony Joshua fight more competitively in the rematch, we wanted to see him make his physicality, his size, a big factor. And he did so to an extent. Still not enough in my estimation, and obviously not enough on the scorecards, but it was also to work the body more regularly, more consistently. Just go to the body, bang there with both hands, and basically just do a little bit more bullying of Alexander Usyk rather than trying to sweet science outpoint him. Anthony Joshua, I thought, did a bit of a mix, but it was maybe 70-80% still sweet sciencing, even though he threw more punches in this rematch. And more importantly, he was throwing with Usyk a lot more. So when Usyk would let like a nice left hand go or let it like a sweeping lead right go, Anthony Joshua was answering many more of those combinations with punches of his own, which made those exchanges look more competitive and which made him more dangerous against Usyk, especially in, I would say, the first half to 2/3 of the fight. And I would say definitely the first half of the fight, Anthony Joshua was responding to more of Usyk's punches with punches of his own, to where, the total punches landed through like 8 or almost 9 rounds. It was nearly even in punches landed. And, some of the scorecards, public scorecards and the official scorecards, Chris Mannix's scorecard, basically had a pretty close fight going into like the 10th round. So Anthony Joshua was going to the body, but I still felt like he wasn't cutting the ring off and seizing the opportunity to just let both hands go, to the body with more regularity. He still wasn't doing that. He did it more than he did in the first fight, But you see Usyk's head movement. It's sublime. He's got remarkable head movement, and it's like effortless. You'll see AJ throw kind of like a half-hearted or a half-confident jab. Usyk slips it just naturally. A lot of AJ's rights up top, Usyk just slips it just naturally. And so then Usyk was, finding the angles, moving laterally beautifully, much like he was doing in the first fight. And, he was just kind of piecing AJ up, but it was a lot more even in the first 3 rounds. And, you could have had it 2-1 either way after 3 rounds. The problem, again, with Glenn Feldman's scorecard is he had AJ up 3-0 after 3 rounds. I can't justify that. But they were competitive rounds. They were close rounds, those first 3. So after the first 3, I don't care if you have it 2-1 this way or that way. Either of those I thought was fair. The 4th round I thought was a clear Usyk round. The 5th round I thought that it was a close round, but I edged it Usyk. Now this was the round where AJ hit, I guess it was treated as a foul. I don't remember how the instant replay looked, but Usyk reacted to the body shot or questionably low shot to where he was like limping. After the ref called time to the action, Usyk was trying to gather himself. And again, maybe this was a clear low blow, but as I was watching it, it looked like it was nearly legal or borderline to where it's like, yeah, AJ, do more of that. Like, even if it's like kind of borderline or it's in the gray area, just do more of that. You see the reaction that it got from Usyk. So I still gave the 5th round. I thought it was close, but I gave it to Usyk. The 6th round, I thought was an AJ round, and the judges agreed with that one. 7th round, I thought it was an Usyk round. The 8th round was a very good round, but I thought that it was a swing round. I thought that the 8th round could have really gone either way. They both, AJ trapped him a few times, let some just blistering punches go to the body, and Usyk chin-checked AJ a few times clearly in that round. I thought that that was a very close round. Now, the 9th round was the best round for Anthony Joshua. That was the one where he looked like he had Usyk like on the run, more or less. It was just blasting him to the body. Looked like he was going for broke. And it was like, that was the scariest version of AJ I've seen in either of these 2 fights. That was pretty much what people wanted to see AJ do a lot more of, what he did in the 9th round. So go back and rewatch that 9th round. That's when he basically just went almost a little head over skis, but it was clear that he had Usyk somewhat hurt to the body. Then he started mixing up the punches up top. By the way, AJ was trying to land a really nice uppercut. He missed almost every time he threw that hard uppercut to the head, but he caught him a few times with the uppercut to like the chest, solar plexus area. The uppercut, good punch, but he should have just started targeting the body more and more. And again, when Usyk is doing that jabbing, I felt like anytime Usyk is slipping the punch, AJ should just follow that up with just going to the body, again, with both hands. The body is not moving the same way that that head is. Again, Usyk's head movement is almost second to none in the heavyweight division especially. But I also thought that AJ could have done some sweeping punches with the left hand to try to lead him in, he being Usyk, into his power right hand, because it's clear that was like the money shot that AJ was going for. He wanted to line up a nice right hand, and he caught Usyk beautifully a couple times with it, but not with enough regularity and not with like the full weight and confidence behind the right hand. But he would catch him, kind of here and there. But again, it wasn't regular enough to really be an issue. And neither was like the jab. Even though he was trying to throw it more often, Usyk was slipping the jab. But again, AJ was boxing very well. I know that we didn't want to see him do too much of the sweet science stuff, but he did it in a way, especially again in the first half of the fight, where he looked like he was still boxing, technically boxing, even though a lot of us thought that doing mostly that would be ill-advised. But he was doing it in a way where it was like a sustained pressure, where he was not just waiting for Usyk to kind of do Usyk things and then react to that. No, AJ was stepping forward with his with his hands in a defensively responsible position, but he was throwing his punches with determination and basically, again, responding to more of Usyk's activity with activity of his own. But again, I didn't think he was throwing enough to the body, especially given the visual effectiveness that it had on Usyk. So again, the ninth round was AJ's best round. He was letting go with both hands this time to the body, and he was relentlessly going to the body. He was basically treating this like a you can run, but you can't hide. That was AJ's, body language in that ninth round. It was remarkable. But maybe that also played into why in the 10th round, the very next round, Usyk had his best round, basically like giving AJ like 6 unanswered punches at a time, just piecing him up with both hands, just boom, boom, just both hands letting him go, skillful punches, but he was just rocking AJ to the point where by the end of the 10th round, AJ's leaning up against the ropes, basically just saying, come on. So maybe there was something to, AJ pursuing Usyk as heavily as everybody wanted him to pursue physically. Maybe that did take a toll where the immediate aftermath of that was, again, Usyk having his best round. And then I thought Usyk closed the show, well, not close the show in terms of a knockout, but finished the fight strongly in the 11th and 12th round to where I thought he won one or both of those, probably both. But Usyk, rounds 10 through 12, either won 2 or 3 of those final 3 rounds, and that ultimately would be the difference in the fight. So this, again, was a very competitive fight. AJ fought a valiant fight. I thought that he gave a very good performance. No, he didn't do, again, as much body punching as I would have liked to have seen, and he didn't just sustain that body attack over the course of round after round after round. I felt like if he kept his foot on the gas, not just totally emptying the clip, so to speak, every single round, because you would obviously gas yourself and make yourself more vulnerable, which many people were advising AJ to go for broke. Basically, fight this fight like it's a 6-rounder. And then what happens? Like, if you don't get him out of there after 6 rounds, now you're just, out of breath, and Usyk's just going to take over and probably stop you. I thought AJ managed his gas tank well. You could argue he managed it too well, but I thought he managed it well. He didn't have enough, I thought, to win the last 2 to 3 rounds, but he wasn't just helplessly against the ropes getting battered in the last round either, as he was at the end of their first fight. But another thing that I wanted to see AJ do more of was in the clinches to basically try to put Usyk in like headlocks and just do more whacking to the body and to the side of the head when you are in those clinches. Those are more or less free shots. And yes, you can somewhat be tiring yourself throwing those punches, but trust me, it's a lot easier to find Usyk when you've got him, tied up than when you've got him in the center of the ring doing Usyk-like movement. You know that you're going to be able to at least smack him to the body with a few fists. And that's another thing. It's almost like AJ is still not aware of how outsized his power is. It's like, AJ, you don't have to land on Usyk the same way Usyk's landing on you. Like, if Usyk is hitting you with like a clean left hand, yes, it is a very effective punch. And yes, Usyk does knock a lot of his opponents out. But you don't have to then try to land an equal right hand up top. No, if you just cuff them to the body with the right hand or do a sweeping left hook, way more left hooks to the body, please. Just trust your power that it is going to have the desired impact on Usyk. It's almost like AJ still truly doesn't understand that part, which we're going to speak to his, how he kind of conducted himself after the fight. I thought that it was both a little bit concerning and a little bit refreshing. I wasn't mad at how AJ was. Yes, it was kind of weird that he kind of took Usyk's flag, his Ukrainian flag, and rocked it, paraded it around the ring. I think AJ meant well, but he was also very indignant after the fight, where he was basically saying, F that, talking to Lomachenko, saying, no, true boxing should have won this fight, which makes me think that AJ might have really thought that he won the fight, which it's not too out of, like, if you're the guy in there, it's easy for us to say, watching the fight, what the guy in the ring should be thinking or how he should be interpreting the action. We're watching so second-handedly. AJ seems like it's hard to interpret how those emotions were reflecting like his thoughts, because, we've seen boxers act in all sorts of ways before, during, and after fights. So I'm not going to make too much of that, nor will I make anything of, him grabbing the mic and saying the things that he said. I thought he was complimentary. I thought he had more of an FU attitude than we're used to seeing Anthony Joshua's show. So I don't want to overanalyze AJ after the decision was rendered, but it was definitely out of character from the Anthony Joshua that we've known to appreciate, you know? But yeah, this was a very close fight. I thought Usyk finished the fight strongly, and I thought AJ, again, left a little something on the table when it came to clinching and putting his weight on Usyk and just muscling him around a little bit, and again, using those clinching opportunities, which there weren't enough of those, like force clinches where you start whacking to the guy's body. You see it all the time. Like, look at what Oscar De La Hoya tried to do to Floyd Mayweather in the first round of their fight, where he got him in a tie-up and just started going relentlessly with like 20 punches to the body. No, they aren't clean punches. No, the judges might not look at those as cleanly as if they happened in the center of the ring, but the opponent is still going to feel that. And I just felt like maybe something was still left on the table in terms of that. But effort-wise and trying to, and basically just trying to maximize your advantages as you see fit, I think Anthony Joshua did a very good job in this fight. I just think that he came up, again, a little short, and he evidently did come up short of securing the victory over now the defending champion Alexander Usyk, which, I mean, look, there's the fight itself, and we've just been talking about that fight and what we might have seen in that fight, and not enough could be said about Usyk's, again, his head movement, his angles, his up jab, his left hand, and he was going to AJ's body as well. And he would often go to AJ's body after AJ went to his body, which should also tell you something that you need to do a lot more of that, because look, Usyk is then trying to respond like, hell no, he's not the only one who could throw body punches. Let me throw some of my own. So yeah, I think AJ still could have gone to the body more, but all in all, he fought a good competitive fight. It was just a close decision win for Alexander Usyk. So there's the fight itself, and then there's like the aftermath, the impact of the fight, what the fight means, the repercussions of the fight, what it does to each guy's legacy. Alexander Usyk, you need to start having, greater discussions in terms of where he falls on the timeline of pound for pound, fighters history-wise, right? I mean, he's obviously the undisputed or former undisputed cruiserweight champion, still undefeated till this day, which, I mean, these things can very much change in the blink of an eye. I mean, look at what happened with, on the UFC side, defending champion Kamaru Usman just got knocked out, and so that's going to adjust how people talk about him historically. Yes, he could get that back with like 2 or 3 more wins or something like that, but one fight could change everything, right? And we see it time and time again. But Alexander Usyk is a historic fighter. He is now a successfully defending unified champion. He's now got 2 wins over Anthony Joshua, and yes, it is kind of weird for Anthony Joshua's legacy, being that he defended his title successfully several times. And Anthony Joshua has wins over Vladimir Klitschko, Alexander Povetkin, Joseph Parker, Dillian White, Andy Ruiz. He beat Andy Ruiz in the rematch. But it's just it's unfortunate that the super fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, at least as of now, it didn't happen when it was at its biggest and most meaningful. And also, Anthony Joshua still hasn't fought Tyson Fury, which would have been a mega fight. And now maybe this rematch between Usyk and Anthony Joshua might just dash that fight entirely. We might never see Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua, which would just be a shame if Anthony Joshua doesn't fight Fury or Deontay Wilder. So now that Alexander Usyk has beaten Anthony Joshua twice, and the dust will settle over time, I have a hunch that Tyson Fury will still come out of retirement to fight the Battle of Undisputed, or the Battle for Undisputed, against Alexander Usyk. That's just my estimation. I don't see Tyson Fury just going off into the sunset, never to return to the ring, and never to try to fight for becoming undisputed champion. Tyson Fury knows history. He's a student of the game as well. So he might act like he doesn't care what people think. I think that that matters to Tyson Fury. And if Tyson Fury does retire, never to return to the ring, the pundits and so forth, they will hold that against Tyson Fury, that you did not come back to try to fight the guy who just beat Anthony Joshua twice. So I think Tyson Fury is going to come back. For Anthony Joshua, I mean, he's made so much money in the sport, and I feel a little bit bad for him. Like, look, I often empathize with fighters, whether they're winning or losing. I just really empathize with the plight of the professional prize fighter. It's just a very unique way of life. And I feel like there is not a price tag that you could that is too much to pay these guys, given how much they are sacrificing in the ring. So Anthony Joshua, now in the wake of back-to-back losses, and what he's lost 3 out of his last 5 fights now, right? If you include the loss to Andy Ruiz Jr., it's tough because now you know that he's not the greatest of the era, obviously, right? And he's not, a historic heavyweight. He's commercially a historic heavyweight, but this, he's not in the top 10, top 50, when you're talking all-time heavyweights. This back-to-back losses to the former cruiserweight champion, that matters big time. And now I would say Anthony Joshua is probably closer to, a Riddick Bowe placement on even though he's had a longer career. After Riddick Bowe fought those 3 fights with Holyfield, he was all but shot. Even though he got official wins, I think, against Andrew Galata, who was beating the hell out of Bowe, Bowe just was never the same fighter after, especially those first 2 fights against Evander Holyfield. Now, Anthony Joshua is not looking like a shot fighter, not looking like anything close to a shot fighter. Some people think that maybe he's a little gun shy with letting his hardest power punches go. But if you can't reliably hit the guy and you don't have confidence that a punch that you throw is going to land, you can see why you might want to take something off the fastball. That might be the case with Anthony Joshua. But again, I feel like all that gets resolved with targeting a much less mobile body, right? But Anthony Joshua, he still can make history going forward if he does indeed want to return to the ring. Like, we've seen a lot of emotion out of Joshua in the wake of this fight. Like, I don't know if you guys saw like the press conference with Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, talking after the fight, but he's highly emotional. He desperately wanted to win this fight, and there's just a lot, I'm sure, going on in his heart and mind right now. So he's gonna, I'm sure, just take some time. But I think that if you look at it from a macro level and look at what Anthony Joshua is still capable of, first of all, I think that he still beats, most of the top 10 in the heavyweight division. I still think that that's the case. I still feel the same way about Deontay Wilder after he lost 2 out of 3 against Tyson Fury. I thought, if you put Deontay Wilder in there with Dillian White, with Joseph Parker, and Joseph, that would be interesting because we haven't, we'll get to that in another conversation. But against Andy Ruiz, I would favor Deontay Wilder. I'm going to do a preview on the upcoming Wilder versus Helenius, but, I think Deontay Wilder will probably knock out Robert Helenius. So sometimes people's mind and, and their opinions on fighters change. They overcorrect on their opinion of the fighter based on a recent loss. They'll have a recency bias where it's like, not only is the guy not as good as we might have once upon a time thought they were, but they ain't nothing. Like, that's kind of sometimes the overcorrection that I see with fighters. No. AJ still beats most of the top 10 in my opinion. And I think you would see a little bit more viciousness out of AJ against other fighters in the top 10 because other fighters aren't as defensively special and aren't as technically brilliant as Alexander Usyk. Now, you do have some technically very good fighters, and we'll talk about Frank Sanchez in the videos to come. We'll talk about the fight that we just saw between Philip Ergovich and Zhang Zheli, which that fight could have gone either way. Like, I was watching this with some family and some others, and my dad thought that Philip Ergovich winning over Zhang Zheli was a robbery of Zhang Zheli. I thought that it was maybe close to it. Watching the fight, it felt like Zhang Zheli should have edged a decision. Like, not only did he score the knockdown, but when you look at Ergovich's body language and just so many different moments of different rounds and so many different times Zheli caught Ergovich with that left hand, especially in the first half of the fight. I get that Ergovich finished the fight strong, but it seemed, I need to rewatch the fight, but it seemed like Zheli should have won that fight, but neither here nor there. You do have some good fighters in the heavyweight division. I still think AJ is near the top. He just isn't. I don't think he would beat Tyson Fury, and I don't know if he would beat Deontay Wilder. That's the fight that most of us probably still want to see, right? We know that Tyson Fury is probably the king of the hill, or Alexander Usyk. We need to see that get settled. That's the fight that needs to happen, and I feel Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder eventually needs to happen. Now, if Wilder beats Helenius, what would be he's going to fight Helenius. So what would be the next good step for Anthony Joshua if he still wants to pursue this? I would think maybe because since Filip Ergovic is now the, I believe, IBF mandatory, right, with this win over Zhang Jie Li, I think that maybe Anthony Joshua versus Zhang Jie Li would be a very good fight. Another 6'6", 6'6" like AJ. Usyk is 6'3", but AJ 6'6", Zhang Jie Li 6'6", and it's another southpaw. AJ has just developed a lot of experience now fighting the same outstanding southpaw twice. So I would really like to see perhaps Anthony Joshua versus Zhang Jie Li. I think that would be a great return to the ring if he does decide to continue his career. But that remains to be seen. I mean, these are, again, very emotional moments in fighters' careers, and this is just a very unique and dangerous game. We'll see what, happens in the aftermath of Usyk versus Joshua 2, but those are just some of my thoughts. I had Usyk winning basically 8 rounds to 4. That was my score, and there were a couple swing rounds. Again, 1 through 3, I think could have been. I think those were all very close rounds, but I think it would be an injustice to give either guy all 3 of the first 3 rounds. So then the other swing round that I had was 8. And then I forgot which between 11 or 12 was a swing round. But the 11 and 12 were somewhat close, but I know that Usyk demonstratively won one, and then the other one was closer out of those, last 2 rounds. But this was a very good fight. Anthony Joshua did not embarrass himself out there, and this was more a testament to his competitiveness than it was an indictment on any of the areas that many of us feel that AJ might fall short, such as physicality. Even though, man, like one of my relatives, I won't say, but said, oh man, it's almost like AJ went to private school. And I had a couple years of private school, but I get what he was saying. He was basically saying AJ is not being rugged enough. Seeing the type of impact that those rugged moments for AJ has, that you just wanted to see more of the I don't give a F type of ruggedness. It just seemed like that is what would have been the path to victory for Anthony Joshua. And it's like even in the roughest moments, he would then default to the sweet science style of fighting. Even if it was a high-speed chess match, what did we say going into the fight? We couldn't have a chess match break out. And unfortunately for AJ, much of this match was still a chess match. It was a more competitive chess match. It was a chess match that involved a better Anthony Joshua who was throwing more punches and who was smarter in the punches that he was throwing and who was, to his credit, going to the body more than he was in the first fight. It was just still a little too much of a chess match that you just know would eventually favor Alexander Usyk, But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this rematch between Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. Hats off to both guys. They put on a hell of a show. This was a very, very competitive and just a highly skilled fight. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. And please, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you were into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.